February 18, 2026, 2:17 a.m. At a U.S. Air Operations Center somewhere in the Middle East, an alarm sounds. It isn't a shrill alarm, it's a cold, insistent electronic beep. On the main radar screen, a single point of light multiplies. And again, and again. Within seconds, what was an empty sky becomes a cloud of more than 200 red points of light, moving in unison. The swarm is in the air. Launched from secret bases deep inside Iran, the largest drone attack in history has just begun. 200 kamikaze drones, the absolute elite of the IRGC fleet, are on their way to American targets in the Middle East. For Tehran, it is the culmination of a decade of meticulous planning. It is the weapon they believe will finally break American power in the region. They are wrong. The countdown to their annihilation has just begun, and it's counting down just 11 minutes. 11 minutes until the greatest strategic failure in the history of the IRGC. 11 minutes until the end of a doctrine. 11 minutes until a lesson the whole world was about to learn. For years, Iran has invested heavily in a strategy they believed was the key to defeating a technologically superior adversary: saturation. The swarm doctrine. The logic was brutally simple and, in theory, irrefutable. While the United States built $100 million fighter jets and $2 million missiles, Iran would build thousands of cheap, disposable, and lethal drones. They didn't need every drone to hit the target. They just needed a few to do so. They believed they could launch so many drones at once that American defenses, however advanced, would simply be overwhelmed. A defense system can shoot down 10, 20, maybe 50 targets, but 200, 300? The math, they believed, was on their side. The spearhead of this doctrine was the Shahed-136, a kamikaze drone with a 50-kilogram warhead, a range of over 2,000 kilometers, and a production cost of just $20,000 per unit. It was the Kalashnikov of drones, cheap, reliable, and deadly in large numbers. But for this attack, Iran unveiled a new weapon, the Shahed-238, a jet-powered version of the 136, capable of reaching speeds of Mach 0.7, nearly double that of its predecessor. The plan was a lethal combination. The faster Shahed-238S would arrive first, forcing American defenses to focus on them, while the main wave of slower Shahed-136S would approach undetected, overwhelming whatever remained of the defenses. It was an ingenious plan, refined over years of exercises and simulations, a symphony of low-cost destruction designed to be irresistible by sheer force of numbers. And that night, they executed it to perfection. What they didn't know was that the United States hadn't been sitting idle. While Iran was perfecting its swarm doctrine, the Pentagon had built a wall, not made of concrete, of technology, and it was about to go into action. The 11 minutes begin. 2:17. The exact moment the Iranian swarm is detected, the U.S. Integrated Air Defense Network springs into action with an efficiency born of years of training and billions of dollars in investment. It is not a single system. It is a web of systems, a layered steel wall, each layer designed for a specific type of threat, all working in perfect coordination through a real-time data network. It was precisely for a scenario like this that it had been built. The first layer to spring into action is the most advanced, the F-35A Lightning II fighters. 4 of them were on air combat patrol at 40,000 feet, their pilots connected to the Theater of Operations sensor network via the MADL data fusion system. The F-35s don't even need to turn on their own radars to see the swarm. Their passive sensor systems, including the AN/AAQ-37 DAS distributed aperture system, which covers 360 degrees around the aircraft, detect the drone's thermal and electronic emissions with crystal-clear clarity. The fastest targets, the jet-powered Shahed-238S, are automatically prioritized by the Weapons Management Computer. AIM-120DAMR, AAM air-to-air missiles are fired from long range, far beyond visual range. Each missile, costing over $1 million, strikes its $20,000 target with lethal precision. An economically unfavorable trade-off, but a militarily necessary one. The first wave is decimated before it even gets close to its targets. The drones that survive the first layer encounter the second, the Patriot PAC-3 MSE missile batteries. Each Patriot battery consists of a long-range MPQ-65 radar, an engagement control center, and 8 launchers with 4 missiles each. Originally designed to intercept high-speed ballistic missiles, the Patriots have no trouble whatsoever shooting down subsonic drones. Their PAC-3 MSE missiles, with their maneuvering fins and active guidance, destroy targets with brutal and methodical efficiency. But even the Patriots can't catch them all. The volume of the attack is immense, and each Patriot missile costs $4 million. Using a $4 million missile to shoot down a $20,000 drone is a battle that Iran believes it can win simply by exhausting the stockpile of interceptors. That's where the third layer comes into play. At every critical U.S. base, Iron Dome batteries, the same system that has defended Israel for over a decade, have been installed. Designed specifically to handle large volumes of cheap rockets and mortars, the Iron Dome is the perfect tool for the swarm of Shahed-136. Its EL/M2084 radar tracks each drone individually, and its battle management computer calculates in real time which drones pose a real threat to the protected targets and which can be ignored. Only drones on a collision course are engaged, maximizing the efficiency of the Tamr missile stockpile. Each Tamr costs only $50,000, making the exchange economically viable. The missiles are fired in salvos of 2, filling the sky with trails of white smoke. The Iron Dome closes in on American bases with ruthless efficiency. And for any drone that, by some miracle, manages to get through these 3 layers, the final line of defense awaits. On Navy ships in the Gulf and at strategic points on the bases, the HELIOS, high-energy laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance, system springs into action. 60-kilowatt laser beams, completely invisible to the naked eye, fire at the speed of light, frying the drone's electronic systems and engines and bringing them down from the sky in seconds. The cost per shot for HELIOS is less than $1 in electricity. Beside them, the Phalanx CIWS cannons, with their firing rates of 4,500 rounds per minute, spit out a wall of tungsten projectiles. 11 minutes after launch, the last Iranian drone is pulverized in midair. The swarm has been defeated. The attack has failed. But for the United States, the operation was just beginning. Iran made a fatal mistake, a mistake born of necessity and arrogance. To coordinate a swarm attack with more than 200 drones spread across hundreds of kilometers of sky, they needed constant communication. Each drone, to maintain its position in formation and navigate precisely to the correct target, transmitted a continuous stream of telemetry data back to its operators on a 915 MHz frequency. It was a low-power electronic whisper, almost imperceptible, which Iran believed to be completely undetectable. They underestimated the F-35. The fighter's AN/APG-81 AESA radar is one of the most sensitive pieces of technology ever created, capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously and distinguishing a drone from a bird 200 kilometers away. But its true power that night was not its radar. It was its passive electronic warfare system. Operating in completely passive mode, the F-35 emits no energy, making it virtually invisible to any emissions detector. Instead, it listens. With extraordinary sensitivity, it is capable of hearing the 915 MHz whispers of Iranian drones hundreds of kilometers away, capturing every bit of transmitted data. While the F-35s were busy shooting down the drones, their onboard computers were doing something far more important. They were tracing the telemetry signals back to their source. By triangulating signals from multiple drones, the F-35s were able to map, with meter-level precision, the exact location of the control centers and launch sites from which the swarm had departed. The very system that allowed Iran to launch its mass attack became the beacon that doomed them. The fatal mistake was not launching the attack, it was turning on the radios. As the last drone was destroyed over Iraq, the F-35 pilots had already transmitted the coordinates of the launch sites to Central Command, the IRGC bases at Isfahan Air Base, and the Shahroud missile test range, until then secret and protected by the anonymity of the night, were now marked with a red X on the digital battlefield map. Every coordinate was accurate to the meter. Every target was identified. Iran had spent years hiding these facilities. In 11 minutes, its own drones revealed them. Authorization for retaliation was instantaneous. There was no debate. There was no hesitation. There was only the order and its execution. The F-35s, which until then had been acting as defenders, switched to attack mode in a matter of seconds. The transition was seamless, almost instantaneous. From their internal weapon bays, they released their own munition, a GM-154 JSOW, Joint Standoff Weapon, glide bombs, with a range of over 100 kilometers, and GBU-39 SDB, small diameter bomb, with an accuracy of less than 1 meter, were released well beyond the reach of any remaining Iranian air defenses. Guided by GPS and equipped with their own small folding wings, the bombs flew silently toward their targets, invisible in the dark sky, carrying the American response. The impact was devastating and immediate. In Isfahan and Shahroud, IRGC drone operators were still staring at their screens in confusion, trying to understand why their drones had disappeared from radar when the American bombs struck without warning, without a chance to retreat. The hangars from which the drones were launched, the control trucks that guided them, the depots where hundreds of other drones were stored, and the radars coordinating the attack were pulverized in a matter of minutes. The retaliation was so swift, so precise, and so overwhelming that before dawn, Iran's ability to launch any further swarm attacks had been completely annihilated. The sender had received its package back with sky-high interest. The Iranian attack was a total and absolute failure on every level. Not only were 100% of the drones intercepted without hitting a single target, but the attack itself led to the destruction of the infrastructure that made it possible. The swarm doctrine, Iran's great hope for defeating the United States, proved to be strategic suicide. The cost-benefit analysis is brutal and definitive. Iran spent about $20 million on the 200 drones it launched. The United States spent about $80 million on missiles and ammunition to intercept them. At a superficial glance, it looks like an economic victory for Iran. They forced the US to spend 4 times more than they did themselves. That was exactly the calculation Tehran had made. But this analysis completely ignores the cost of retaliation. The destruction of launch bases, drone depots, command centers, and control radars in Isfahan and Shahroud represented a loss of more than $4.2 billion for the Iranian regime. For every dollar Iran spent on the attack, it lost more than $200 in irreplaceable strategic assets. The lesson is clear and inescapable. Against a networked adversary with multiple layers of integrated defense and the ability to turn the enemy's own emissions into a weapon against them, the doctrine of saturation is dead. Modern warfare is not just about how many missiles or drones you can launch. It is about who controls the electromagnetic spectrum, who can see without being seen, who can hear the enemy's whispers and turn them into a scream of agony, who can defend and attack at the same time with the same assets in a single, fluid operation. That night, over the skies of the Middle East, the United States proved, once again, that on this battlefield, they are the absolute masters. The Iranian swarm was not a show of force. It was an invitation to their own destruction, an invitation that was accepted, answered, and settled in just 11 minutes. And the bill came due with interest, $4.2 billion.